afternoon, everybody. My name is Jamie Lundine. I'm a health geographer, and I work with an organization called the Ground Truth Initiative. We implement a project called Map Kibera. So, where is Kibera? What is Kibera? Kibera is an informal settlement or a slum in Nairobi, Kenya. It's home to between 170,000 people and 1 million people, depending on your source of information. Has between 200 and 300 organizations operating. It's one of the most highly talked about slums in the entire world. Yet before October 2009, there was no publicly available spatial information about the area. As you can see on OpenStreetMaps, it's a blank spot. On most government maps, it's represented as a forest. Now, we operate from the principle that without basic geographic information, you can't talk about improving people's lives. So in October 2009, Mikkel Marin and Erica Hagen traveled to Kibera and recruited 13 mappers, one from each village in Kibera. They were trained on how to collect geographic information using GPS devices and upload it and edit it on OpenStreetMap. Now, what did they collect? They collected information about roads, about health clinics, about small businesses. You can see in this next slide an M-Pesa agent, M-Pesa being the famous mobile banking export from Kenya. And they were then able to upload all this information in phase 1 of the mapping, which took 3 weeks, to OpenStreetMap. Now, after this time, we had a map of Kibera, but we didn't have very detailed attribute information. So in phase 2, we got funding from UNICEF in order to map 4 different thematic areas: health, water and sanitation, education, and girls' security. Now, the mappers went out and collected very detailed information, and what we ended up with was likely the densest map ever created. But we didn't stop there. We printed these maps of each thematic area out, and we wanted to gather the stories behind the data, because the data themselves didn't tell you how people viewed their community and how they were accessing these resources. So we printed out the maps. We called community forums where we invited stakeholders from each thematic area, and we had them tell their stories. For health, for example, where are you accessing health services? Where do you take your kids if they're sick? How far is the local clinic? How much does it cost? So we geo-referenced all of these stories, these narratives, onto the maps and uploaded them to Slippy Maps, which are now available on the Map Kibera website. Another example of the impact of this mapping in the community is really about talking about disasters. So in May 2010, earlier this year, there was a major flooding event in Kibera. Our mappers, we have a core of them on the ground, were able to survey the area. They knew their villages and collect the information and create this profile of the damaged buildings and the damaged areas in Kibera. This was commissioned by UN OCHA, and in the future, when the systems are in place, perhaps this data and this evidence could be used to compensate the people who lost their property. Now, one of the other projects that we run is called Voice of Kibera. You see here, Bongo Storiako. That means tell your story in Sheng. So the local community there have really taken up this initiative. We're using the Ushahidi platform to crowdsource stories from Kibera. One of the main challenges that the Kibera residents face is that how they're portrayed in the mainstream media isn't necessarily how they view themselves and how they experience their daily lives. You can see a story here, 3 killed in Kibera, and then part of the story is talking about how the police responded to this incident when thieves were trying to steal a car and the mob killed them. This next slide shows you another story which was written by the Kibera Journal, a local media house in Kibera, and they're writing about how fire victims were assisted by MSF Belgium and the Red Cross after fire in the area. Lastly, we work with a local news team called the Kibera News Network. They're young residents of Kibera who we've trained with flip cameras, and they go out and collect local news stories, and they upload them to YouTube, and they're available on the Voice of Kibera site. Now, we're not stopping with Kibera. We're in the process of turning over these projects to the local residents to run themselves. It's a challenging process. I'm not going to pretend it's not, but we're moving on to other areas such as Mathare, which is one of the largest, well, probably the second largest slum in Nairobi. Here's the team. You can reach us on our websites there. From all of the team in Kibera, I'd like to say asanteni sana for listening, and we'll be holding a self-organized session. Thanks.